My first-hand experience in politics was in 2008. I was fresh out of my first semester at university, and I was thinking that politics would be like this. I would think that with my newly acquired knowledge in politics, I'd be able to engage in deliberations with politicians and with citizens. I would be able to learn things from them and at the same time contribute with what I had to give. A few days afterwards, I realized that politics was actually like this. So, I realized that politicians didn't have time to talk to citizens directly. And I also realized that citizens themselves felt that politicians didn't give them enough attention and they didn't care enough about them. At the same time, citizens would not want to get disturbed when you would knock on their door, wanting to talk to them about different issues. That was in 2008. At that time, there was a feeling that deliberation was missing in politics and that empathy had been lost. But politics was not always like this. There was a time when politics was all about deliberation, from antiquity to later on, when communities were small enough for participants to be able to engage and to also show that they care about one another and to deliberate. In the modern era, a new time came when states would have millions or billions of citizens, and deliberation was replaced through representation. At that time, then politicians were supposed to engage on behalf of citizens in parliaments and to exchange ideas for the common good. In 2008, however, as I said, there was a feeling that things had changed and that deliberation had been replaced with marketing sound bites and spin, that empathy had been replaced with alienation, and that politicians didn't care, as I said, that much about citizens. At the same time, in 2008, however, a new change happened in electioneering, which coincided with the first time that Barack Obama used Facebook for political reasons. It was the third revolution in politics, the first one being the coming of the radio, the second one being the TV. At that time, there was a great hope that social media would actually bring back deliberation into politics, and that empathy would also be brought back through conversations. Social media themselves were labeling themselves as inherently conversational. For instance, Twitter in 2010 was labeling its sign-up process as join the conversation. So everyone was thinking, okay, then this is the time when things can change once again. And 7 years have passed since then. Now, social media is everywhere. 2.3 billion people use social media today, which is 31% of the world population. 27% of those have easy access to social media through mobiles. Millennials are spearheading this change. In the United States, 80% of millennials, which is young people between 18 and 29, use Facebook, and 40% use Twitter. Obviously, politicians themselves are riding this wave. If we look at two English-speaking countries, if you look at the UK, what you see is that In 2015, 78% of MPs were using Twitter. Also, from 2013 and 2014, within a year, politicians spent 115 days just tweeting. And also, as you can see, 1 in 3 UK voters, which is 32%, followed someone on social media. It's the same thing in the US. In 2014, every senator was using Twitter and YouTube, and just 3 senators didn't have a Facebook profile. Also, 24% of young registered voters were following and getting their news by following politicians on social media. I wanna share with you this quote, which I found as I was browsing through the internet a few days ago, and it really struck with me. When I see politicians campaigning, I get the feeling they're talking to someone else, not me. I don't know their reality and they don't know mine. As I said, it's really struck with me, and I think that most of my friends identify with it as well. Could I ask you to raise your hands if you identify with this quote? Could you raise your hands once more if you think your friends as well identify with this? That's actually a big paradox, because the millennials are those who engage the most on social media, and it's the very same category of people that feel disenchanted about politics. So in the US in 2014, 19% of young voters actually voted. In the European elections, it was 28. If you look at the UK, the situation is actually even more worrying. So 75% of 18-year-olds in the UK did not feel they can influence the political process, and 81% held a negative view of the political class. Why is that happening? And to find the reason to that, I'd like to ask you something else as well. How many of you have received an email or have read a post from a politician within the last week? Can you raise your hands, please? How many of you have asked a question through email or through social media to a politician within the last week? Did you get an answer? Yes. So 2 out of a room of 40 people. That's the biggest problem. And that's actually what most studies show as well. Even though politicians extol the virtues of current social media, because of citizen engagement, most of them only engage in one-way communication, which is they're trying to publicize themselves, or they're trying to look cool, or they're trying to send messages to as many people as possible. Communication that goes both ways, which is question and answer, is very rare to find. It's usually reduced to 140 characters, which doesn't make for a meaningful interaction. And it also gets buried within the noise of social media. Now let me explain why this is the case. If you want to send a message to as many people as possible within as little time as possible, Facebook and Twitter are amazing for it. And as you can see, the impact is great. The difference comes, however, when you're actually trying to use the same means to engage. What you can see from the image out there is that the impact is almost zero. So politicians spend time drafting their messages, and then when they send them out, they get lost. Not too many people see them. And they also get buried within the noise, and sometimes even within the abuse. The second option is email, of course. What happens with email is that it's an amazing tool when it comes to expressing private concerns. Obviously, it keeps privacy when a constituent sends an email to a politician, and then you have enough space to actually engage meaningfully. However, most emails that politicians receive are about public issues. That's why it usually happens that they receive 40, 50, 60 emails a day for the same topic, and then they get to answer, to copy-paste answers in order to respond to everyone. So where does that leave social media today? The problem is that whereas the politicians could have used it to engage in their own communities through dialogue, they're actually using it to multiply the volume of their own monologues. What that leaves citizens is basically with better binoculars to look at the political stage. To be fair, there is conversation going on as well. But that conversation is mostly adversarial. So you can find politicians like taking jibes at one another, or their followers getting into conflicts in the background of the posts made by politicians themselves. The most interesting thing about this is that politicians themselves recognize the flaws of social media. In my discussions with politicians, they always tell me that nothing replaces the handshake and the face-to-face communication with the voters. What they're saying is that nothing can replace the impact that the handshake makes, and that's how they know how that people would actually vote for them. The problem they have, though, is that usually when they go door knocking, they don't find young people at home anymore. Because young people do other things in the evening. And during the election, I was taking a taxi drive, and I got to talk to the taxi driver, and I put the same question to him. And what he replied was, you know what? After so many hours of hard work, the last thing I want to do is to talk to politicians. I want to relax. I want to go for a beer with my friends and actually enjoy my free time. So rather than receiving politicians in my own living room when they wish to come, I would much rather have a virtual living room where I would invite politicians to come and answer my own questions when I wish that should happen, not the other way around. So this is what I and my colleagues have been working on for the last 2 years. Creating an online living room where citizens can ask questions and receive answers from politicians, and politicians know that by engaging, they can actually make an impact. So the way GovFaces works is that politicians are completely silent. And it's very difficult to make politicians shut up. So the way it works is that the only way to post content on GovFaces is by asking a question or giving an answer. What this means is that on politicians' profiles, you have questions and comments from citizens. And the other users can upvote and downvote those to show to the politicians what needs to be answered first. That's efficient for citizens. Rather than sifting through tens of pages of electoral material to find out exactly what you're interested in, you ask a question to the relevant decision makers, and then you get an answer to the exact same question. You can also compare their answers, because you can ask up to 5 people. It's also very efficient for politicians themselves. As you can see from our experience, every answer that a politician gives, and that takes 1 or 2 minutes, usually responds to, on average, 10 expressions of interest, and it's read, on average, by 300 people. It's very efficient. So we've tested this for the last 2 years to see how it works. We've launched GovFaces at the EU level in 2014, so a transnational level. We tested it at the local community level in the UK, in Portsmouth, and we've also tested it at the national level in Switzerland. So, can GovFaces bring back deliberation into politics? Yes, it can. In 2014, within a time span of 3 months in the run-up to the European elections, as many as 50 members of European Parliament and 50 candidates interacted with citizens from all across Europe, engaging in more than 2,000 conversations. At the local level, in Portsmouth, 30 politicians from 6 different parties engaged in more than 800 conversations with citizens. At the national level in Switzerland, GovFaces kickstarted a national campaign involving experts, citizens, and decision makers. Can GovFaces bring back empathy into politics? Yes, it can as well. What we found out is that GovFaces can empower real-world events, but it can also facilitate multiple conversations by video with a high number of participants. Now, the dream would be to implement this system, to bring this system of living room politics across Europe and across the world. What I see is governments and parties using GovFaces to enhance their responsiveness to citizens. I see organizations opening up to their own followers and also pressing the politicians to follow suit. I see journalists and academics using GovFaces to source questions and answers for high-quality research, but also highly informative news pieces. And I see campaigners using GovFaces across the world to kickstart debates in the interest of the citizens and exposing them as much as possible. Is that just a fairy tale? Yeah, might be. That's why I want to leave you with these words. If it's a fairy tale, if it's a crazy idea, it's not as crazy as trying to invent powered man flight by relying on the proceedings of your bicycle shop, which is what the Wright brothers did. In the end, it's an amazing dream to have when you wake up in the morning, and a great opportunity to come and speak in this type of setting, and getting to interact with amazing people, and getting to be, for a few hours, part of a community like the one here at the College of Europe. Thank you very much.